On this episode of Eat Sleep Drive, we take a 90s icon for a spin, the 1991 Z32 300ZX.
Gotta be mad.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Eat Sleep Drive 91 300ZX. You guys know that I am back in the day a Nissan fanboy. I had a 240 way back in the day that was SR20 swapped, and then I did a LS swap 240. Well, this is sort of that car's bigger brother, I guess you could say. And I will say, you know, it's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the era. Even though this is a really lovely car, I've only spent 15 minutes driving this thing. Normally I spend more time before doing these things, so this is a true first kind of impression. But, you know, the Supra, the FD RX-7, the Skyline GTR, those are all like, they kind of really overshadow this car. And despite that, this has a really good engine in the VG30. Let's give it a hit. Woo-hoo-hoo! Tires are still a little bit cold. And this one, of course, has been modified. But, you know, the Supra, the 2JZ, and then the RB26 and the Skyline, all those engines, they get so much credit in this era. And this VG30 just really doesn't get any credit. I think the 300ZX in general doesn't get a lot of credit. This car's kind of dicey to drive. It's got so much power. The rear end gets pretty light when you get on it. But the question is today that, is it really deserved that this car doesn't get as much attention as those other cars, the Supra and the Skyline and stuff like that? So far driving it, it's certainly not as responsive as something like a Skyline in the terms of handling and things like that. But I think a lot of things that, or one of the things that people don't really think about, especially with the Supra, is that car really wasn't the best handling car. And it actually feels a lot like this from the last time I drove a Supra. It feels more GT car. This car has been heavily modified, so it's a little more at home on a windy back road. Even things like the steering bushings have been updated on this thing. But definitely feels more GT car-like. It's, at the same time, this thing is ridiculously fast. This thing has been modified and has about every bolt-on you could consider doing. The bottom end is stock, but it has turbos, of course it has an exhaust, intake, all those things, and it made 450 horsepower to the wheels, which is obviously a lot, and that's on a very conservative dyno. And the funny part about that is, the owner's a friend of mine, and he did the turbos, they threw it on the dyno, and then it sort of accidentally made 500 horsepower right off the bat, and they had to dial it back a little bit. Because these engines can take some serious power, and it probably would be fine at 500 horsepower, but he just street drives this thing. There's really no reason to push it. It's already plenty fast. It already spins the tires at will. So it's just kind of funny that this thing is so capable of making the power that it does. And it well. One of the things that I mentioned, like when I first started driving it, and I'll do it here, is that because you have the 6 cylinders and you have more displacement, it's very easy to drive with this clutch. Like, you don't have to give it a lot of throttle to get off the line. And that's something where in a 4-cylinder, like when I had my 240 SX with the SR20, you kind of have to give it more throttle off the line because it doesn't have any torque and stuff. This thing is super easy to drive at low speeds, and because of that torque and stuff like that, you have the additional power to just kind of roll through things without having to rev the heck out of the engine. While we're on topic of seating position, I mean, you sit nice and low in the car. The hood is slanted so far forward, you don't really have any visibility outside of like the front of the dash, so it makes the car feel probably smaller than it maybe is exactly. But these seats, of course, have been modified, so I can't really speak to the stock seats. These are really cool aftermarket seats that he got from Japan. The shifter, the first thing I said when I got in was, this is a man shifter. This actually reminds me a lot of my 911. This reminds me a lot of my T56 that was in my LS1 swapped 240. Very meaty shifts, very solid feeling. Nice short throw on it. I think for me, and I've said this to the owner plenty of times, I would like to hear more exhaust note. It's really quite a quiet, this car is quite quiet. You know, there's certainly something to be said for that. You don't want to be always dealing with drone with a super loud exhaust or waking up your neighbors all the time. So I would call this car kind of stealth in the way it sounds, or the way it doesn't sound, but the way it looks, it's red. And when you ask for the power, it is definitely there. Fortunately, the brakes are really good too. He's upgraded the brakes. I believe these are off of a 350Z or a 370Z or something like that. They look the part for sure, and they stop the car really well. Great bite. Can't speak to how much they fade or don't fade, because I'm not exactly, it's a cold day here. This is a narrow road. I'm not familiar with the car, so I'm not really whipping like maybe usual. But I remember definitely in high school, no man, it just like steps out on you. That power comes on really quick. What I remember being in high school, and these cars were kind of a big deal at the time. Anything that was turbocharged was really cool. They looked amazing. Once again, they kind of played second fiddle to the Skyline and the Supra, but it's cool to finally get to drive sort of an iconic car from my youth, and it's a fun thing. It's a fun thing. Like I like what he uses it for, which is just, it's kind of a fun cruiser. It's a good GT car, but it's also fun on the back roads, especially with all the modifications and stuff he's done. And it's just such a timeless look. I think these cars you will start to see go up in value over the long run. Are they going to be as collectible as, once again, the Supras, Skylines? Probably not. But you know, beautiful car, fun car, and it's like I said, it's fun to drive an icon from your youth and actually enjoy it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Eat, Sleep, Drive TV on Instagram if you want to see what I'm up to in between episodes. I'll see you guys on the next one.